Hello, friends. My name is Host Eric. I'm the host of Talking with Famous People, an evangelist for personality type and cognitive functions, and in this instance, the author of a video explicating how the proper frame of reference, namely attentional manners or cognitive functions, plus the necessary prerequisite informations, etc., that aren't related to that, resolve every single big philosophical question that people have been philosophizing about for all of human history. And my core example here, or the engine of this video, is a quote that Winston's mom put in a chat the other day, which defined knowledge as justified true belief. So, in philosophy, there are multiple theories of truth. In this instance, the question of what distinguishes knowledge versus belief. These are epistemological questions, and epistemology comprises one of the main areas of philosophy. Another would be aesthetics. Another would be ontology, which is about what comprises identity. And another would be like normative ethics. In reality, all of those things could easily enough fit under the category head epistemology, which is the study of knowledge and belief, right? And I'll explain why right now. So, when we try to define knowledge as justified true belief, we're trying to establish that some information ought to be afforded a permanent truth status that we're calling knowledge, and that other kinds of things ought to be afforded the non-determinate truth status of belief. Connotatively, the connotations of the two words, knowledge is perceived as, or used to mean, I'm sure about this, you should be sure about this too. Whereas beliefs used to mean, I'm not sure about this enough to say that you should be sure about this too. So, with the proper frame of reference, what is knowledge is a very simple question. When we know about attentional manners, we recognize that epistemics, the ways of our epistemology, express as either forms of deliberation / determination or forms of knowing. Well, what's the distinction? Obviously, it has nothing to do with whether you're justifying believing or whether what you're believing is true. Knowing is distinct from determining something in terms of the time frame. When you know something, it's instant. When you determine something, it takes time. We know things instantly in two different ways. I know I have a typing session at 11 in 20 minutes because I remember it. One form of knowledge is keeping track of what's happened to you, and I can thereby know that I'm not quite done with the retaining wall. I can know that I've got a typing session at 11, and it's not something that I have to spend time figuring out. In contrast, if you tell me 212 plus 313 plus 79, I have to figure it out. 525 plus 79 is 604. I know that it's 604 now because I remember the answer. Prior to determining the answer, I did not know it. I had to figure it out. If we're talking about whether you should know it, treated as knowledge versus belief, well, that's very silly. Because the other form of knowledge is intuition. So let's look at aesthetics, another branch of philosophy, right? Is there genuinely quality in works of art that is better, makes things inherently better or worse than other things? Or is beauty just in the eye of the beholder? Well, actually, aesthetics is an area of human endeavor that, because it's a holistic piece of work that ends up comprising an identity rather than, say, an explanation. Like I'm talking about, let's say a song. Let's just limit our conversation to music for a second to simplify things. Well, an intuitive is going to know they like that song because it's good. They're going to know that it's good. They might be able to articulate various reasons why it's good, but none of those is adequate to establish as something others ought to afford the statement of true to for others that you're correct. It doesn't change the fact that somebody who intuits whether something is good or not aesthetically is either correct or not, but it highlights the fact that knowing is not what makes things correct. Somebody can be incorrect on determination. Maybe I did the math wrong on that problem earlier. Maybe it's not 604. Maybe it's, I think it's 604, but let's say it wasn't. I knew it by way of determining it, and was nevertheless wrong. My knowledge was not, in that case, if I did the math wrong, not justified true belief. It was remembering the determination I had made by way of deliberating appropriately regarding the matter at hand. So, when we remember that attention first, when we remember that attention first, all these philosophy questions become very easy to answer. What is truth? Well, truth is communicating something that you know either by having determined a conclusion, or by remembering, or by intuiting, and having that communicated statement find no dispute or significantly little dispute. If you're trying to establish the truth via some kind of operation you're going to run to see does it qualify, right? You can't have a universal rule. I mean, what I just said is like, if you're going to try to universalize a rule as much as possible, the absence of disputing of something, it strongly correlates with it being true. But the point is that those statements aren't, and most importantly, that talking to, ideation, explanation, response, making statements, etc., is a form of attention as well. So, when I say a statement is true, I'm asserting this, expecting some pushback, and preempting that pushback with the next step, so to avoid getting bogged down in that first step by saying, and I am saying it's true. Rebut if you want it to function as something other than true for the purposes of our communication. And of course, that's how truth always works, is that it's built out of claims being made, again, a form of paying attention, and it in instances where we individuals broadly agree that something's true, and then those statements have withstood rebuttal sufficiently that that even people who aren't skilled in using discourse to establish, to validate things, basically, know how to invalidate counterfactuals about that. Like if I say we know that chickens should go to church because they eat sunflower seeds, and people eat sunflower seeds, and people should go to church. Okay, so if I were to make some argument like that, even somebody whose attentional configuration doesn't prioritize this kind of discursive parsing should be able to say something like, okay, well, even if it's the case that all humans should go to church, it's not because they eat sunflower seeds, and there's no reason to believe that simply because humans should go to church and humans eat sunflower seeds, that everything that eats sunflower seeds should go to church. So, they may not be able to articulate it that well, but the point is, they'd be able to say, that doesn't make any sense, probably. They might only know it. They might only intuit that that doesn't make any sense. So they might only have knowledge. And if you only have knowledge about something, as per aesthetics, then instead of that definition that that person had said was, knowledge is justified through belief, knowledge, if you're just using your knowing functions, then you can't justify things. Because they're either subjectively known, I remember, it may be true, but the data is subjective, only I can access my memories, so you have to take it on faith that I'm telling the truth. In other words, that I'm not lying, attempting to deceive you. When we remember to frame all these things in terms of actions, it's easy to understand what truth is, right? I'm attempting to deceive you means I don't want you to use your attentional manners on this set of information. I want you to use it on this, because I predict that if you respond to, if this set of information, which is information that I believe to be true, either because I know it, like I remember I actually did go over to Dan's house, or because I've determined it. Actually, I did the math and I already know that we can't afford that. Even though you know it, you want the other person to operate in an environment in which the information available to them causes them to know something different. So you can see here now how, as long as we position the person first, their attentional manners first, and observation, in terms of larger cosmological questions, observation itself first. In other words, there is no reality that comes before or exclusive of observation. And because language provides static representations of things, we can talk about reality as though the noun referenced something. But the only thing we could possibly really mean about it is not fiction. Like, oh, did you read that in a book? Like a fantasy book? No, it happened in reality. Well, what do we mean by that exactly? Is just, I experienced it, or I know or have determined that you should think it's true too because, yeah. Either I remember it, I intuit it, which is not a good reason for you to think it's true, right? But, or I determined it and can present to you the process of determination I used, and it's replicable, so that you can use that same determination process and determine something and then know it as well. You could also point out the fact that how we validate different kinds of statements varies. So if I'm validating your reasoning, I'm validating it with TI style logic. If I'm validating your character, I may be validating against FI or FE. If I'm validating your social grace, I may be using SI. You smell bad and and you look like you've got a bunch of dirt on you or something. So anyway, hopefully this was this was information that people who see this can find helpful, and it's a key that unlocks everything, really. And also that the challenging thing of, like, here's just one guy saying this thing and purporting that it's like globally informative in an unprecedented way. I get how like it's, I mean, it's, from my perspective, it's incredibly annoying because for people who want to know things with their intuition, that's intuitively bullshit. That this random good toothless old guy is saying this globally informative truth, you know? So hopefully it communicates in such a way that you feel incentivized to try to kind of deliberate a bit more about it. If you're not necessarily a deliberation type, that's not your natural function, but you have some sort of deliberation function in your front stack that you can use consciously, and see what you think. Alright, thanks a lot for watching, and don't forget to love yourself with great tenderness and feelings of some stroking.